there are certain situations where you're not going to be able to get out of a relationship and follow your bliss.
Yeah, no, you can.
But is there a world where you could at some point, as opposed to saying, I've got to live for the next 30 years with this person or 10 years with this person? That sounds like a free prison sentence. You're in the free world, but you're living a prison inside in your own home. That doesn't seem like a healthy lifestyle.
It's not. Because I work with such varied audiences, I'm very, very mindful of how painful it is for people to say, if you don't go, then. Now, I've said to them, if you don't go, there's limits to how far I can take you on this growth process, because you're still constantly having this echoing voice that invalidates you and reminds you of that invalidation, in the next room. So there's only so much, but there's still a lot of growth. I mean, your life almost becomes a series of silent acts of rebellion. Some people, literally, I know some folks told me, you know what, I was inspired by what you said, so I just went to an online university and I got my degree and I never told them.
Wow.
And I was like,
and it's
that
just like
to me
inner
is triumph.
Victories. Yeah,
That's a triumph.
It's like everything's a little game for yourself to find your own joy.
Correct. And they volunteer in their community. And what they recognize is that the volunteering is joyful.
Oh, yes.
The narcissist would say to them, why would you want to help a bunch of people who are too stupid to help themselves? They if anything, they'll say their horrible negativity only reinforces that I'm totally right about them. I'm not wrong about this. I'm not a bad person for recognizing that they're toxic, and I can go out and do something that fills my soul. But you're right, it's only a partial victory.
Yes.
But if you can get out, get out.
Right. Okay. So let me ask you this. So again, I know there are certain cultures and situations and countries that probably have harder restrictions of removing yourself. So, so let's figure this out. It's going to be painful to stay in the marriage if there's with a narcissistic person. It's going to be extremely painful to leave for potentially years, where you might have to find a whole new community, move, build friendships and relationships again, be on your own, all that stuff. But if there's light at the end of the tunnel when you leave, 3, 5, 7 years out, as opposed to being in the relationship for that time, is that the better solution?
I think that here it's so hard to say, because if somebody said to me, tell me the best solution, take away all the contextual factors, it's obviously not to be in such a relationship. When we talk about how people manage themselves in these relationships, there's all these forms of contact you can have. And the most extreme is no contact, which means done. You block them, you cut them out, you don't speak to them, you don't take their calls, nada, nothing. And you know what? There's places I've actually seen the hard data on this. Everyone will say, no contact, awesome. Like, I feel so much better now that they no longer exist in my life. But it's a really limited strategy. If it's your family member, if it's someone you co-parent with, it's somebody you might still have professional contact with. So that's such an extreme that it might work like somebody, let's say someone dated someone and you don't have a ton of mutual friends and you move away physically, no contact can happen. And let me tell you, I've done no contact. Whew, it's good. Okay?
Yeah.
Then there's low contact. Now, low contact can be done in a couple of different ways, but it tends to be, what I'd say more perfunctory. You don't really engage with them. It's just really just sort of, if let's say it's a family member, you've decided okay, this person's so bad for me, I want nothing to do with them, but your beloved cousin's getting married. You say to beloved cousin, just whatever the opposite side of the room for seating me is, I'd appreciate it. Maybe they come and talk to you and you give them very simple yes, no, kids are great responses. You go to the bathroom a lot when they approach you. People are going to think you have some sort of digestive problem, but it's a great out. But you step away, and if it gets to be too much, you give yourself permission to leave. So it is, low contact doesn't mean they come to you and you don't speak to them. You might say, oh, hi, yeah, kids are great, yeah, it's been a long time. Yeah, I actually got to run to the restroom. Right. It's one of those. And so, or I got to run, I've got a call or whatever. So you find your ways to maintain, and then you won't have contact with them maybe for 10 more years until there's another wedding or funeral or something like that. So that's more of the low contact. And and then there's all these techniques like gray rock and yellow rock, like all these techniques to figure out ways to communicate. But the tool I give people, and I think maybe I talked about this last time, I don't remember, but it's something I call don't go deep with them, which means don't defend, don't engage, don't explain, and don't personalize. And it's a mantra, like don't defend, don't engage, don't explain, don't personalize. Deep.
What happens if you do any of those
If you defend, you're going to get in the mud with them and they like it and you get dirty. So that doesn't make sense. So you don't want, if you defend, it's just going to escalate and gaslight and fight and there's no point because you're not going to end in any kind of sane, rational place. When you explain, they will definitely gaslight you. So there's no point to that. Engaging means don't get into a conversation with them. Do not ask them what they think of something. Do not tell them that good news. And don't personalize. This isn't about you. They do this to anyone in your position. They're going to manipulate. It's what they do. And so they're going to lie. They're going to gaslight. It's just how their personalities are organized. It's not about you. There's nothing you can do to change this. Not you, not me, not anybody. And so it's a really fun, then that's what we call radical acceptance. And nothing you can do.
Oh man, it's so
it ain't going to change, and that's not because. And a lot of people say, "Well, it's not going to change because I'm not enough." It's not going to change because it's not going to change.
No one's ever enough for them. So, okay, let me ask you a practical question. There's different stages of being in a relationship, right? You meet someone, you go on a date with them. That's a certain stage of a relationship. You date for weeks, months, however long before you say we're going to be committed or exclusive with each other, right? Then there's a marriage commitment and that type of relationship. What would be, in your mind, the key things that an individual should really focus on seeing or experiencing from the person that they want to date before they say, I want to get committed and exclusive with you? Not before marriage, but just, okay, I feel comfortable enough to be in an exclusive, committed relationship with you. What are those key things you would need to see or experience to make sure you feel comfortable taking that step?
Watch how they respond to stress or frustration. If you only had one thing you can do, it's that. Because that's the test, right? Do they become really dysregulated, impulsive, say really awful things, and then, I was just really stressed out. No. Because if they did it they're always going to do that because they're on their best behavior in this early dating relationship.
They'll do it worse in the future.
How are they handling themselves in a traffic jam? How do they handle themselves when you get to the restaurant and they say, oh, we've lost your reservation? Because you really are looking for the person who says, you know what, you up for fast food? Because there's a place across the street. And you know what, it could be the dinner where you fall in love with that person over your, over your
French
cheeseburgers.
Fries and burger, yeah.
Exactly. And so, but if that person makes it, do you know who I am? Oh, let me tell you, Yelp review, blah, blah, blah. You're going to be sorry, blah, blah, blah. No, and I think those situations manifest pretty early on. And the trick is because everything else is sort of new and sparkly and fun, people want to say, oh, they just had a bad day.
They have bad days all the time.
I would say that's especially that early in the game, that's
first
your
few months.
A runaway kind of, or not even runaway to say, just sort of slowly start distancing. Some people need to see 2 of those events. Okay, so great. You'll get your second soon enough. And so I would say that's a big one. I think other things you want to look at are things like are around equity, equitability, and balance in the relationship. How often are you knocking yourself out for them? So in other words, you're shaping your schedule to them. You're shaping your preferences to them. You're giving up things for them. And yet they still make it sound like you give up maybe I don't know, you're invited to a old friend's birthday party, and it's going to be a girls' night out, and they doubt your commitment, like, oh, really, it's your friends instead of me, and then you end up canceling on the friends, and you go out with them, and they'll say, isn't this so much more fun? So they make it seem like your sacrifice was actually good for you. That's something else you could see early in the game. And especially narcissistic people do tend to like to control the narrative. So there will be some isolating happening. If you feel that you're not, you don't feel comfortable saying, I'm going to go see my friends, or, I want to spend time alone with my sister, or something like that, and they pathologize that, especially when it's early. This is sort of a process for you. And if they're trying to annex all of your time, that's a sign too that you need to pay attention to.
Yeah, if they're trying to take you from your friends and family.
But sometimes it's not even that obvious. It's more of a, why can't I come? or they doubt your commitment. And so it's not as like, you're not seeing your friends. It's, you spend a lot of time with your friends. Like, maybe this just isn't the right time in your life for a relationship.
Wow.
I get that. I got that. So they play that game. And then you're thinking, no, I'm kind of really into this person.
So they're not angry at you, but
No,
they're doing
they
it in a
gaslight
covert
you.
way. Yeah.
They doubt your commitment. And because people want to prove their commitment, right? And they know I'm really committed to this. Okay, I find it interesting that on a Saturday night, that's what you chose, even though you've told them weeks ago, and then you give in.
So look out for those two things.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because every time you say something like this, I'm reminded of the past of like, okay, all these stressful situations. But with Martha, I talk a lot about Martha on the show because she's been amazing for me. But with Martha, we had an experience where we went on a trip within the first month, right, of kind of knowing each other and dating. And we were supposed to go to Vegas, and we had flights booked, but for whatever reason, all the flights that day got canceled, and we couldn't get there for the event. We were going to see an event until the next morning on the flight, and we were going to miss it. And so I'm coming to her, kind of bringing a little bit of this PTSD remnants of hope she's going to be okay. Is she going to be upset? The flight's this, and I bring in and say, hey, the flights are not happening. We could try to take a later flight, but we may not make it in time for the event. What do you want to do? Let's just drive.
Yeah, I was going to say, if this girl's got it going on, she would offer let's drive.
Oh, it's no worries. Let's just drive. Where I was so used to people being like, well, I need first class, and I needed this, and this kind of don't you know who I am type of mentality.
Yep.
She was like, you want to drive? Kind of fun with it. And I was like, you sure you're okay with that? And she was like, yeah, let's go. And I was like, cool, let's jump. So we jumped, we just grabbed our bags, we packed, we went in, and we drove, and it had the most incredible 5-hour drive.
Yep.
There was traffic, and it was on a Friday night, and it was whatever, stressful, but we had so much fun. I was like, this girl's got something.
Yep.
She got something going on. And I think when you travel with someone, you can see these stressful experiences.
Yes, I do agree that if you travel with someone, you can see a lot. And that's where I'm saying that stress can come out there too. But I do think it's almost a way to create a living lab and set up a trip in the first 3 months of the relationship. It doesn't have to be elaborate. It could be something as quick as
weekend trip or
Vegas.
something,
It could be a weekend trip. It doesn't have to be 2 weeks somewhere. Watch how they do. Because I will tell you, that's the test. Somebody who can be chill while they travel, done. That's one of, it's almost like a final exam of the early part of the relationship.
Yeah. Before you exclusively commit.
And again, for people to know, this doesn't mean you have to have air tickets and this. It could really be like a road trip. It could be a camping trip. It could be any number of things, but a few days where it's really just you and them, and because when you travel, inevitably, it's something, right? And to watch how you manage that. It's a great test, because if it's a narcissistic person, if everything isn't just so perfect, and the thing is, you got to watch how they try to gaslight it away. If you start getting a little leery on, this is not okay, they're going to make it into, don't you understand? I wanted to make it perfect for you, okay? I just wanted it to be a great trip, and so because if you might be pushing back and saying, the way you were acting under stress, I just was trying to make it right for you, and now you're feeling so guilty because they were trying to make it right for you. So I will tell folks this: if you're noticing there's some of those early patterns, and you decide to distance from this relationship because it feels like there's some red flags, don't tell them the why.
Really?
Yeah, this ain't you ain't their teacher, their life coach.
Oh.
You're trying to get out of this relationship, because if you tell them the why, they're going to gaslight you.
They're going to say, well, I was stressed.
I was trying to do something nice for you. You're being too particular.
Yeah.
You're unappreciative. Exactly. You're sensing a red flag. You can make it about yourself and say, whatever your reasons are, I think work's getting to be a lot for me, or maybe this isn't the right time for me to have a relationship. And people say, well, Dr. Ramani, isn't that a missed opportunity? No, they ain't listening to you. So it really, if you say to them, this is why, it'll be gaslight city, and you're going to stay in it. Because I think people feel like, I need to tell them and maybe they'll improve. They're not going to improve. That's the radical acceptance.
Right.
When people get into narcissistic relationships or antagonistic or toxic relationships, they don't know what they're dealing with, or they're replicating cycles from earlier in their life, right? Or both. And so what happens is that it's if you pivot too quickly, you don't get a chance to sort of